Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 162 of Real Blend, a podcast that probably has just as many viewers as the Academy Awards. My name is Sean O'Connell, the managing director here at Cinema Blend, getting you ready for a very exciting show. I know that it's late in the week, and people don't care quite as much anymore, but we're going to break down the 2021 award season and the Oscar winners. We're going to have our final thoughts on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, season 1, and then we also have the Falcon and Winter Soldier director, Kari Skogland, who is joining us for the show for this week's interview. And by us, I mean Kev McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Hi, Kev.
Hey, guys, fresh off my second vaccine shot, so this should be fun.
Congratulations, sir.
This could be
Thank
wild.
you, guys.
And Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Hi, Jakey. How are you?
I'm doing well. Today is 2 weeks since my second shot, so today I am technically, by the books, officially vaccinated.
So yeah, and my second shot was today, literally an hour and a half ago. I got Pfizer, so we'll see. Again, I don't feel anything yet. I'm interested to see kind of. I know the second shot people have been saying they feel
really
a little
tired.
Yeah.
I actually felt better after the second one than I did the first one.
You're not better than us, Sean.
I am, though, slightly. I mean, that's what proves it, essentially. This week's show, if you're watching us on YouTube, hello. Take a look at these handsome faces right before you. While you're here on the YouTube page, hit subscribe, turn on your notifications. If you are listening to us where you get your podcast needs met, we have a lot of information in the description, including where you can sign up for Real Blend Premium, which is a very fun show that we like to do on Mondays. And if you think this show goes off the rails, you gotta listen to a premium episode because they get out of control. We also dropped
crazy.
A bonus episode that you can go back and watch with director Ben Sharrock, who has a dry indie comedy out called Limbo, which we're going to talk about in this week's reviews section. And it contended for 2 BAFTAs, even though it was his feature film debut. One of the more recent interviews we have up on the YouTube channel as well, too, or you can listen to it in full as part of a podcast episode, is director Simon McQuoid, who directed Mortal Kombat, and that's available on HBO Max. That's what I was trying to say. And also in theaters, if you feel like going to the theaters. And coming out on Disney Plus was The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So this week's weekly poll, as we transition over to that, was now that we've seen all 6 episodes of the show, and Jake, I'm going to throw this one to you. I asked the fans, was the first weekend of the first season of The Winter Soldier, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, here are your 3 options. Oh, I'm sorry, I give you 4 options. Was it awesome, decent, disappointing, or terrible? Those are your 4 options. Before I ask you your pick for those, what do you think the Real Blend audience went with?
I'm going to assume that the audience kind of felt like I did, because I don't feel like I saw a massive amount of, oh my God, that was amazing. In the same way that I don't feel like I saw a massive amount of, oh my God, that was terrible. So I'm going to lean toward decent in terms of what they said, which is also what I think I would have voted as well if I were to have voted.
That came in second place with 36% of the votes. 48% of the people who voted said awesome. So
were they confused by the question?
No. They honestly felt that it was awesome.
Wait, we're talking Falcon and Winter Soldier?
We're going to get into our breakdown of Falcon and Winter Soldier next. Kev, where would you go of those 4 yourself personally? Awesome, decent, disappointing, and terrible.
Right in between decent and disappointing, probably. But I think there's enough good in the show that I would probably pivot a little more towards the decent column if I was voting for this. It's definitely,
That's my new favorite Kevin McCarthy face, where he's like looking up and trying to decide how mean he wants to be. That's my new favorite Kevin McCarthy face.
Yeah, I was just giving you guys some breadcrumbs and not the whole bakery. We'll leave it at that.
All right, well, listen.
That's my Mortal Kombat reference.
Now that we've got you really hyped for our interview with Kari, this is the director of the first season of The Falcon and Winter Soldier. This is actually a really informative conversation where we get into such things as whether she would direct Captain America 4, the way that the show approached the race discussion. Kevin asked a really great question about the physics of the shield and how they replicate that on set. A typical Real Blend interview. So without further ado, the Real Blend interview with Kari Skogland. Why I keep messing that up. I'm so sorry. The director of The Falcon and Winter Soldier. So once the season played out and everybody saw the full vision of what you guys were trying to accomplish, there was a lot of talk about some changes that might have had to occur to the storyline because of the way that you guys shut down production temporarily. So I'm wondering if you could just clarify and maybe elaborate on how the pandemic affected the overall season 1 story, if it affected it at all.
Actually, no, it didn't affect it. We always were telling the story we were telling. I think what it did was make it more relevant as social unrest sort of took became so obvious and so such a necessary evolution of what was happening around us, alongside the political extremes that we were watching. It just was made our story more relevant. We were surprised, honestly, that we had sort of been prescient and that we were telling this story, and all of a sudden life was imitating art. What we did do was, I think, sharpen our pencil a little bit and go, okay, let's make sure that we are pushing the envelope as far as we can. And so I think that's the only way it affected, but we never pivoted on story or even on character story. So this was always what we were telling, which is why I thought from the very beginning, it was the most, when I first went in and talked to the gang at Marvel, I said, this is the most important story of the century. And I still believe that.
Yeah.
I found it really interesting because you're basically dealing with like a 6-hour movie, essentially, all put together. I'm actually genuinely interested to know when you're filming the series, do you know when you're filming a cliffhanger to an episode? For example, at the end of episode 5, when he opens up the case and obviously he's seeing the suit and the costume, does Mackie know at that point that's a cliffhanger? Do you know that's a cliffhanger at that point, or is it kind of like edited along the way?
Well, you know what you intended. So script-wise, there's in the process of any creative endeavor, you start out with a plan, and then you hope that through the process you will abandon your plan because you've come up with a better plan, right? And you've been inspired by events that happen, whether they be character-driven or whether they be, something that happened on set, or an idea that occurs. So yes, you bake in certain ideas that could work, but then you are ready to abandon them as you shuffle the deck later. So I would say very few of what we planned to be cliffhangers ended up being the cliffhanger.
Oh, interesting. So, do you mind elaborating on that episode 5 cliffhanger though, specifically? Like I would love to. Like, that's a big cliffhanger at the end of episode 5. Was that always original, or did that come through the edit?
I think it came through once we saw all 6, and because at that point, and by the way, it's also informed a little bit by some of the footage you have, because when you're writing it, you don't have. So, for example, the GRC of it, and the lights go out. That could have happened in a couple of different places. And so where were we going to put that, or we began it in one and then finished it in the other. And so because we shot it like a movie and we had it, like if you play it like a movie, it functions as that. So then it's kind of, you put it together like that. And then you go, oh, where are the that would be a great place to go. And that would be a great place to go, And so you allow that process to take hold. And so I can't even remember what our original cliffhanger was. But yeah, I can't remember, but that became very obvious that was going to be the perfect moment. And, just Mackie's face where he's really processing, because we actually shot that very early on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was because you shoot out of order.
Yeah.
So, right. So that was probably within the first 3 weeks. And in
wow.
Yeah. And within that moment, though, I think we all knew, by virtue of the opening of the box, the Pandora's box, so-called, that we were making something special. It was a very, I would say, not just thrilling, but emotionally charged moment to know he was opening because we knew he was going to take on the shield or take on the costume, but we wanted to draw that out and make it a conversation, make it a debate. Should he or shouldn't he? Mm-hmm. But we knew that at the end of it, of course, he was going to take it on.
My mental clock at that point of that episode told me I had 15 minutes left to go. And so when you cut to black, I screamed out loud in pain, like physical pain, that you were ending the episode at that point. So if that was your desired effect, you hit it.
Right. It worked.
Kari, speaking of cliffhangers, I want to talk about the final scene, the final moment of episode 4. You got what I think is one of the greatest shots in the history of the MCU, which is Wyatt Russell standing with blood on the shield. I mean, you could frame that and put it above my fireplace. I'd have to answer some questions about it, but I still think it's just a gorgeous shot. I'm just curious about filming that scene. I feel like we just haven't seen a scene that brutal in the MCU before. I'm sort of curious if you got notes from Marvel about how brutal you could go, how much blood there could be on the shield or flying, and then also we never truly get to see what he does to this guy. I mean, does he cut his head off with the shield? Like, what did you intend for him to actually be doing with that shield?
Well, yeah, he does. But it's all in the imagination. Mm-hmm. I've worked a lot in the violent space, and you'll notice we did not use guns.
Yeah.
That was a decision.
Okay.
So there's very, very little gunfire. For obvious reasons. So each action sequence was a challenge, but we knew that because the conversation we were having is the relevance of the shield. What is a hero today? Who gets to carry that shield and become the hero? What is a hero? What's the inner workings of a hero today? If it started as a soldier warrior, which was born of the anti-fascist struggle, then we had 9/11, and so now we had a new kind of hero, which was the first responder, and then fold into the pandemic and other events, and it is frontline worker. So the idea of a hero is much expanded, and Sam is not a super soldier, so even more important because now even elitism is taken off the table as part of the hero ideal. So that scene had to have blood on the shield. And of course, I've done some very brutal work. I don't know if you've ever seen Vikings Blood Eagle or, Walking Dead or, any of the things.
Handmaid's Tale.
Handmaid's Tale,
You're not squeamish.
I'm not squeamish. And neither were they. I mean, it was really important that we push the envelope on that scene, but I also felt less is more. Leaving it to your imagination was as important as just seeing the stain of blood. And that moment where Sam wipes some of the blood off because he ultimately loves that shield. And it's a metaphor for the American flag. So this is really a very strong, these are very strong emotionally charged images that we I think need to look at, right, from a metaphorical space. So we decided, in terms of how much blood, yes, there's a lot of conversation because you wanted it to be just enough, not too much. You're not showboating. You've just done something completely heinous with this shield, which it's going to have to recover from. And so, part of me could be bloodthirsty and I could put blood all over it, but it wanted to be just the right amount. So we were very conscious about it, is what I want to say. It was very chosen, and I think we got it right. And just enough blood, even in the indication of what happened, it became a bit more in his head because I wanted it to be not one brutal action, but a ballet of it, so it became extraordinary. We didn't really know what we were seeing because he's out of his mind in that moment. So I wanted to experience that with him. And then he comes back to it and he's sort of shakes his head and kind of goes, whoa, what just happened? That's what I wanted us to, and so I wanted us to feel that alongside him, which made it experiential as compared to observant.
And following up really quick on what Jake was just bringing up about the blood on the shield, and I was just interested in the first thought that came to mind after that scene happened was, what would Steve Rogers think about this moment? Like, what would the character of Steve Rogers have thought that with his shield being used? Is that something that you intended? Like, for me as an audience member, it's kind of like, I was like, what would he feel about where the shield is being used right now?
Well, I hope he'd feel, to be honest, I didn't think like that because he was not there. He didn't understand the shield means, the context, because the shield means something different to everyone. Not only, audience members the shield means something. Each of our characters, the shield meant something. That was very much a conversation we were having. It. The shield meant something to Carly. The shield meant something to Sam, obviously, to Bucky, to Isaiah, who said no self-respecting Black man's going to pick that up, and to everybody has a perspective on what that shield means to them. So in the case of Cap, I would say, had he known the whole story, he would have been as gobsmacked as Sam and Bucky, and probably had the same reaction. You cannot carry that shield. It cannot become a weapon of destruction. It has to be a weapon of, or it has to not be a weapon. It has to be an instrument to save people, an instrument to help.
Kari, Kevin indirectly feeds me into my next question, which is that you have a character who casts a massive shadow over almost every decision made, for the benefit of the show. And that's Steve Rogers. And it's a character you can't even use. He's not even on the table for you necessarily. But that Marvel fans are, sticklers for details and continuity and all these things that we look for. So the minute you make a joke about where is he even, we start bringing up those questions. So where do you think he is? And where did the moon conspiracy theory stem from?
Oh, you mean he's not on the moon?
Well, tell me.
Dr. Manhattan.
No.
So you're potentially feeding into the rumor that he's living on the moon.
I don't know. That's what I heard.
Oh. All right, we'll roll with that then. Sounds good.
Kevin Feige is like popping out in the background. He's like, don't say anything else. Don't say anything else.
The bolt of lightning. He's got a button.
Kari, the Zemo dance became a big social media thing. And one of the cool things about it was in your show, it's a quick moment. Then they released the Zemo cut of the dance. So we're just wondering, like, the timeline of that. Did you originally intend to have the full dance in the episode? Why did it get cut? And was it ready to go, edited? Is that why you put it out later on? Like, what's the story behind that?
That was a total lovely surprise. No, we, them going to that nightclub, from the beginning, I wanted to find a space where they could go and we could just see them as characters, right? Just have downtime with them. And because I was also diving into Zemo's character a little bit in terms of humanizing him and understanding where he was coming from, that he wasn't just a black and white evil guy. And so the three of them together, the Three Musketeers of it, I suppose, on their little adventure, gave us that opportunity to see them as just regular guys. And then even more so in a regular environment where, there's dancing and there's this kind of weird art thing going on. And we found this great nightclub that Ray Chan, our production designer, did an amazing job of turning into this crazy space. And, I put up big screens so that we had that sort of otherworldly reflections going everywhere. And it made it into this just hip nightclub. So anyway, we did a bit of the guys just being the guys. Now, when the three of them are together, just as people, they are dead funny. They riff on each other. And what people don't know about Daniel Bruhl is he is the funniest of all of them. He came up with that line, which I'm surprised nobody else is. Trouble, right? I thought that was a great line. That was him just, being Daniel. in the ad lib of it in the moment. So anyway, we were just having a good time because this was sort of a fun moment in the show. And there weren't, we didn't have the stress of the having to kill someone or, deal with all that. So he just was like bopping away. And the two, there's just some wonderful moments. They were doing shots together, not real shots, of course, movie shots, but which didn't quite make it in. But no, he did that little dance. And then I think he mentioned it in an interview.
Yeah.
And that's where that came from. So to Marvel's credit, they went back into the footage and found all the outs,
But so the dance he's doing in that scene was improv, or did you say, Daniel, just do this dance?
Total improv.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's
Okay.
being Daniel. That was him just going, because the music was great, right? And I was playing it for hours. I mean, to get all that footage, you're obviously doing a scene and doing it again, and you have to do it to the same beat. So I found a tune that would work for it. And so that went on for, so I guess at one point he got a little bit bored. And so he just started.
And a viral moment was born.
And a viral moment was born. How great is that for Zemo of all people?
I hope Quentin Tarantino's proud because he put Brule on the map for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We've had the pleasure of speaking with Marvel directors before, and we've heard an interesting story that happens oftentimes, which is as they're planning out what they're going to do and the effects it's going to have on the MCU, there will be moments where Kevin Feige will pop his head in and go, hey, that thing you're going to do, you can't do that because it kind of conflicts with what we have planned down the road, or like we're planning on doing that, so you can't do it in your project. So with that in mind, I'm sort of curious, how far in advance do you know what Marvel's plans are, if only so that what you were doing didn't conflict or step on the toes of a movie that's going to be happening a year from now or 5 years from now?
I didn't have that experience, so I can't really answer that. We were in our own space, inventing a story that had its own beginning, middle, and end. So at no point did anyone say you can or can't do anything. I had the opposite experience, which was, sure, go, try it, make it yours, have fun.
Wow.
So if you wanted, if you wanted Evans to show up, could you have done that?
Oh, that I don't know. I never asked that question, so I don't know. I would not know that, but I don't think so.
but to that end, there are certain things that had to happen by the end of this series, and we can talk openly about it because it's out there now. And things like John Walker had to become U.S. agent and team with Val, and Sharon had to be placed where she was, and where she ends up. So in a way, is there an element of a show like this that almost has to be reverse engineered? That that like certain people have to get to certain places, and you have to figure out how to get them there?
Well, yeah, but that's part of the storytelling anyway, right? You know that he's going to pick up the shield. We knew he was going to pick up the shield. There was no question that was ever not going to happen. We had to get there. We had to make that the conversation of the through line, not only from a character space, but from a plot place. So yes, there's of course in any storytelling, there's reverse engineering. We knew Sharon was going to be the power broker. So how do you reveal that? How do you dribble that out? And that comes back to seeing the whole edit, the 6 hours of it. And once you've got all that footage, because sometimes you're overcompensating and, you discover, oh, wow, we said that 4 times.
Oh,
we
interesting.
need to say that 4 times now that we see it all together. Because you write a scene and then you write another scene and then you rewrite a scene and then you also, by the way, as you're editing, like any movie, you move things around. So a scene that was in episode 1 might have ended up in episode 2 and, and back and forth. So then you realize, we've hammered that too hard or we haven't mentioned that enough or whatever. So you get to now look at all 6 and like you would a movie and go, all right, actually, we can hold back that little piece of information, or we need to add that so that it adds up later. So yes, there's constant reverse engineering or forward thinking and juggling, I would say, all in the same sentence.
Gotcha.
The effects on the shield are unbelievable to me. Like there's I guess I'll use the tree scene because I think that's one of the coolest like sequences. And also there's another great scene I think where he throws it like at a pier, like a wooden, like the piece of the pier, and it bounces back to him. How much of that is practically there for them on set? Because at some point when you're dealing with CGI, it's almost impossible to make it look like they're really catching something or throwing something. So in the throwing and the catching, especially if you have it in one shot specifically, are they given anything to throw or catch so you can make it feel like they're weighted? I was wondering how you did that.
You know, it's a real art, honestly, and it's a dance between, as you said, a live thing, a piece, something that does have weight to it, and something that is going to be added. So it's testimony to the whole VFX process. And the guys really rehearse with the body language. It's as much an action sequence as any fight sequence, or so it's all very well planned. And what we did have fun with, which I can tell. So one of the for me, the shot of the shield hitting the tree that I wanted. I mean, that's very metaphorical, right? It's hitting the tree of change or whatever you want to call it. And I wanted to kind of shake the roots. And anyway, so we do this shot and everyone is loving it. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, this is going to work really well. And then we realize, okay, we're going to do this sort of football, throwing the football back and forth. And, they'll bounce it off of trees. And then we go, yeah, so they're going to ruin all the trees? Like, how are we going to do that? Like, well, we're going to have to make it this opening idea to the whole shield hitting trees and bouncing, deflecting off things. We're going to have to protect all the trees. So that's why they're all wrapped in
like a cushion. Yeah, like a foam
cushions
cushion.
and the workout mat.
Tackle dummy on a football field.
Yeah, so that, we don't destroy the trees with the shield.
That's really funny because as an audience member, I just assumed they did it for the purpose of the series, where like they were just using it for the bouncing aspect. That's the way I took it. That's cool to know you did it.
The idea behind it was to protect the trees because the shield is so powerful that it would just embed itself in the and it would hurt the trunks. So we couldn't destroying all these trees. That wouldn't be.
And the trees apprecited that.
Yeah. You should have said no trees were harmed in the process of filming this episode.
Kari, I think more so than any other project in the MCU, you guys really handle the topic of race very well. Whenever you guys did the scene with the police officers where they were asking Bucky, is this man bothering you? I thought, I've never seen a scene like this in the MCU before. I was wondering at what point in the conversation of making this show was the topic of race brought up, and how you guys made sure that it was handled well, it was approached delicately, but not glossed over because this is because a superhero project. Like, you guys handled it like any other drama would.
I think from the very beginning, obviously in the writer's room, Malcolm Spellman was very aware. We were all very aware of the story we were telling. This was a race-related story. A black man was going to pick up the shield. And to Marvel's credit, they wanted to push the envelope. They wanted to have that conversation. They wanted to dip into the topic. And I think it's obviously a very relevant and this is an ongoing topic. This is not something that is new. The same conversation has been happening annually. So, yes, right now I hope that we are part of the change, that no one can ever do enough at this point, to it seems like but if we've moved the needle at all of awareness, then we've done what we set out to do. But no, this was always very, very important to not just this project, but to, I think, the whole conversation of diversity at the MCU and the continuing objective to embrace diversity.
Kari, Joe, and Anthony Russo went from television to the films, and Cap was their baby for 4 films. On the heels of your series wrapping up, Captain America 4 gets announced, and so I'm curious, if the gig were to be offered to you, would you want to do it? Or do you like the sort of longer form storytelling of series television?
I think if Marvel called me to do anything, if they called me to film the phone book, I would do it.
But do you have an attachment? Do you have an attachment to these characters? Do you feel like you want to continue with them on their journey?
Listen, the Marvel characters are all very, very rich. I've become friends with Anthony and Sebastian, and I really enjoyed working with them. And Emily and Daniel Bruhl. And I mean, I've worked with them for a couple of years. So of course, I have a special place in my heart. But as I said, if Kevin picked up the phone, I would answer it.
I would too.
Kari, the moment in episode 6 when we finally see Anthony in the full everything, that moment when he bursts through the window and then you get that hero reveal shot. What was that like to film? What was that moment like on set that day? It must have been really exciting just to get that shot. Was it? Did you get it in the first take? I mean, it's almost as cool as, I just love that shot. I wanted to ask you just the moment of filming that.
I thrilled you. Yeah, we had a lot of conversation about how best to first reveal the moment that we see him in the suit, and we wanted to tease it a little bit by seeing him in the air, but too small to really,
I like the tease. That was I was like, oh, she is. I appreciated that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, I like that. Sorry.
I'm a big fan of big entrances, and unusual entrances. So I wanted it to have impact. So what better way than to crash through a window? I mean, I couldn't think of. And so but it had to be woven into an opening that made sense of it. And so there was a lot of discussion. And of course, we storyboard everything and we make sure that everyone is making the same movie, because there's a lot of moving parts, not just, it's all, not just a top, but just the mechanics of making something happen. Because obviously something like that, we were in a real building. He couldn't come through the real window because we were 30, 40 stories up, right? So there was a whole orchestra of how to achieve it. But it was great. And, so yes, we were, all of us in the moment.
Yeah.
Just, breathtaking. And you realize we had, you start getting comfortable seeing him in the suit because we'd seen him, we were shooting out of order. But when it dawns on you in the moment, oh, this is the first time the audience is going to see this.
Yep.
This is the first moment. Then all of a sudden, it's breathtaking.
That's awesome. Well, we are out of time. We really appreciate you joining the Real Blend podcast. This was a lot of fun to break this down with you. And congratulations. Continued success.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kari.
All right, we want to thank Kari and Marvel and Disney Plus and everyone over there who gave us time to discuss the Falcon and Winter Soldier. We definitely want to get into our breakdown of the season in full now that we've been able to see the finale. I'm going to go first. I'm just going to say that I really felt like the finale was I guess I felt the way about this finale that most of you guys felt about the WandaVision finale, which was that you had a lot of expectation for it and it kind of deflated what you had hoped was going to happen. Everything about the finale to me felt really disjointed from everything. I honestly thought that I'd missed an episode from where it began and where the previous one left off. Because, and Kevin, you talked about in the interview how great that cliffhanger was of him opening up the case. And then the next episode begins and it's like we've moved right into the GRC. So and then I started to realize that, and this is where I'm going to give the show a little bit of credit for the amount of things that it dove into with, the race conversations in Isaiah and how that they potentially experimented on him and abused him.
That's a great scene, by the way. Great scene.
It's a terrific scene. And all the stuff about Bucky wanting to resolve, his past demons, and Sam wrestling with whether he's worthy to take on the Winter Soldier, and John Walker and whether he should become the new Captain America, and whatever they introduced with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and what they got going on with the Flag Smashers. It's too much. It was too much. And so I don't think that they properly resolved everything in a satisfying way.
Or is that not their intention? Is it that they are setting stuff up to be paid off in the film? Are we looking for a resolution that they never intended to give us?
I don't know, because I don't think the Marvel TV shows should work that way. I think that they need to be their own little contained thing.
I agree. I think
but see, on the flip side, then I want them to have a significance in the feature films, because otherwise I feel like you could potentially kind of just skip them
See, I think it gets a little messy if you're dealing in TV and movies at the same time for a complete narrative structure. Because I do know, we both know, all three of us know, four of us know, that the show exists in the MCU. It's just like if you look at like a long timeline of the MCU, this is like a little blip, no pun intended. It's like a little tiny little. It doesn't really do anything crazy narratively, I feel. That couldn't have been done in the first like 20 minutes of a new movie. Do you know what I mean? Like they could have literally set because Evans already gave Mackie the shield. Mm-hmm. We already knew he felt conflicted about it at the end of Endgame. The entirety of this series is about the conflicted feeling of becoming Captain America, right? I mean, in the sense of but the diving into the serious themes, that's the most interesting part about it, right? Is dealing with how the Avengers make money and all those kind of things, and then the race element was a very powerful element in the show. And Jake was talking about the scene with the police officer. So it's like there's interesting things here. I just genuinely, I don't know what I learned about Bucky and Sam that I didn't know by the end of Endgame that couldn't have been narratively or emotionally explained to me at the beginning of another Avengers or Captain America movie.
Kind of how I felt about WandaVision too. Like what did we leave?
Does that make sense?
No, I get you, but I feel the same way about WandaVision, where like we left that series knowing that she's sad. Like I assumed she was sad, right? Like I got it,
yeah.
And you could have squeezed like that could have been the top of Doctor Strange too. You could have just squeezed that in.
And I'm all in on the whole idea of kind of exploring these characters a little deeper. I don't know that the show gave me anything new. I mean, Sean, did the show give you anything new that you didn't already know about Mackie or about Bucky and Sam?
No, not about those two. But what I sort of applaud the show for doing, but then it didn't do enough of it, was I never thought much about the impact of half the world's population leaving and then half the world's population coming back 5 years later. Like
Endgame gave us a little bit of that.
Right, but that has to be a much bigger conversation than just, oh, they were gone and now they're back. Like these conversations that the show kind of got into in terms of, well, no, we're going to redraw some borders and we're going to repatriate and move people around because if you came back and someone was in your house, they now have claim to your house, you know? And I think
I wish they dived more into that, though.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's super bold that they're even thinking about things like that because in a superhero movie, normally they just gloss over it.
Yeah. See, I think you take the Zemo storyline out and dive more deeper into that.
Maybe. Yes, Gabe.
Do you, on that note, do you think that the post-blip element of humanity, of like the greater world, is going to be a part of the MCU moving forward? Or do you think this was their way of like, let's address it here, and then in the movies, we kind of just want to have a regular Earth? That's like, that was a thing that happened.
Interesting.
I was going to say, to Gabe's point, there is a great reporter here in Chicago, a guy named Brandon Pope, and he pitched an idea for Black Panther 2 that I thought was fascinating. Obviously, they're in the situation where they no longer have the great Chadwick Boseman. What if Black Panther 2 took place during those 5 years within the blip, and he's gone? And sort of the focus of the movie is like them trying to deal with the fact that he's not here anymore, and then something happens in Wakanda. Like,
that's fascinating.
Which, like, I just thought, and as soon as I read that, I went, damn, like that's kind of, I mean, eventually they're going to have to, like, it's going to have to be addressed. And so that you're kind of just like pushing back the inevitable. But that is kind of a fascinating idea.
It's a great idea. Yeah.
Great
I would
concept.
love to know what happened in Wakanda over those 5 years.
Now that could be a good series.
I was going to say, that could be a good show.
Oh, God. I'd watch the shit out of that.
And they are doing a Wakanda series, and there's no real details. They are doing a Wakanda series. I don't know why my voice got so high right there,
but they are.
Yes, they are. And that's a great, that's a terrific idea. Just so.
I'll say, as much as, so with WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, for me, the biggest issues I had, and I know every movie and show has exposition, but some of the exposition and reminders of MCU storylines, it just felt very, very kind of like on the nose. It was almost forced onto the audience. I feel like they need to trust that the audience is smarter than that we know the larger scope of the story. At the same time, I also understand you probably are bringing in new viewers, but I mean, when you're that deep into the MCU, are you watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier if you haven't seen
Probably
if you
not.
haven't seen, I mean, you know what I mean? Like those
I'm
characters
going
are
to
so
remind you right
specific.
now, though, when we were watching the Snyder Cut, Michelle asked me if Spider-Man is in it. So I just want you to know.
Yeah, but here's the, would she have watched the Snyder Cut if it hadn't been for you?
Oh,
Right.
no. Not
All
at all.
I know we got to wrap up. Let me say one more thing. I want to give Wyatt Russell credit. I thought that arc, that whole arc of his character and kind of what happens to him, to me, that was the most interesting part of the show. Like that battle of taking on that shield and kind of what it meant and and people not liking him for. I remember that monologue that Mackie delivers at the end of the final episode where he's on television being interviewed, and like those conversations and themes were all really interesting to me. And I thought that Walker, Wyatt Russell's character, was a really interesting kind of like in between Evans and Mackie taking the shield eventually. I thought that was a really cool thing. I don't know. I thought that part of the show I really liked.
Which do you guys like more, WandaVision or Falcon?
I think I'm going to swing. At first, initially, I thought Falcon, but I think I'm going to swing back over to WandaVision because even though I didn't like where it ended up, I really liked the big swings it took at the beginning. And while it didn't, and while Falcon may not have had like the ups and it was just a little too consistently meh the whole way through, as opposed to.
You were loving it. You were texting us and telling us you were loving Falcon.
I was really like sort of digging kind of the straightforward Marvel action, but then there was nothing more to it than that. Like and she brought up a point. I know we're gonna go. I'm just gonna wrap this up really quick. She brought up a point in that interview that actually kind of makes me like the finale less, which is they didn't necessarily know where the beats to each episode were gonna end, and episode 5 is sort of a kind of a long. Aside from the first few minutes, kind of actionless episode. That's kind of, and then episode 6 is nothing but action just thrown. So like they didn't why didn't they kind of find a way to blend the two? Like they didn't have to be like they clearly didn't have to be that way.
You could have taken out a crab boil. A few less minutes in New Orleans working on the boat.
I did like I liked a lot of the boat stuff, to be honest.
See, I think the boat stuff's interesting, but it was too much.
Yeah.
Like there was and it's interesting because I like the theme of meeting the family members and understanding the life outside of the Avengers. But then there were moments where I felt like they would stay on one story for a little too long, but the action in the show was decent. Actually,
So which
the
one,
action was
Kev?
cool.
Wanda or Falcon?
See, I still think the best thing I've seen out of any Marvel series so far are the first 3 episodes of WandaVision.
Okay, now you got to remember, in terms of like the MCU, this is like Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk. They are still figuring these shows out, right?
I like the Incredible Hulk.
Okay, fine. You're the one. Congratulations.
I can't be the only one. I cannot
on
be
an
the only
island.
one that likes the Incredible Hulk.
Iron Man 1 was a home run.
Yeah, no, it's good. I know.
But if you go back, his point though is if you go back and watch Iron Man, it is a very basic superhero
awesome.
story compared to where they are now, I think is Sean's point.
I think Iron Man 1 is a really good 7 out of 10.
It's great.
Oh,
it's
I
really
love
good.
Iron Man 1,
You can love
man.
Iron Man, but it's still not Captain America Civil War.
It's an
You know?
origin story. Yeah.
sure.
It's an origin story. Okay, let's get to the final thoughts on the Oscars ceremony. The only reason why I can't call this the worst Oscars I've ever watched in my entire career of watching the Academy Awards is because I still think the Anne Hathaway James Franco one is the worst thing I've ever seen.
But that was a fun train wreck to watch. This was a boring train wreck to watch.
Yeah, because every time they would cut back to them, you would just be waiting to see how.
So Jake, would
bad
you
it
say
was
instead of
gonna
a
be,
train wreck, it was more like you were trying to watch the miles long that it takes for a train to stop?
That's
You were
exactly
just watching
right.
a train stop.
Yeah.
This was
You could say it was the Pineapple Express. Yeah.
This was a misfire on every level. And listen, it's been dissected left and right. But boring is the word for it. Like I can't comprehend. And all 4 of us we are the target audience for this show. Like I totally get why the majority of mainstream people, if you dialed into that thing for 10 minutes, that you ran for the hills, which is why the ratings were so terrible. But it was so overly important. It was so in this effort to capture like why we love the movies. Like it didn't convey passion for the movies at all. I didn't care for any of those individual stories, about, I hated that instead of the montage clips, they had those descriptions about the nominees. None of that
show
felt
the average
earnest.
person why they should seek these movies out. Like the biggest complaint this year is, I don't know any of the movies. give them clips to make them want to seek out the movies. Like, show those quote unquote Oscar moments. Like no average viewer that watched the Oscars walked away with any more knowledge of these movies than they had going in.
I have a theory. I don't think I think they knew the ratings were going to be bad no matter what they did. Mm-hmm. I think they just literally put on a show that celebrated the people behind the scenes and the people making the films. That's why they told those stories. I think the reason they did that is because, first of all, the year for the movies wasn't a huge year for Oscar films. Like, there was not a lot of films that people had seen. You know, Nomadland didn't make a ton of money. So I think at the end of the day, in my opinion, I think Soderbergh, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't know this for sure, but I genuinely believe that he just said, you know what, we're going to put the show on and celebrate movies and celebrate the people who make them, and the people who are going to tune in are the people who actually watch the films this year and care about this stuff in a very intimate way versus like an average viewer. I really do feel that way. I think that show.
Why didn't we connect with it then? Because
I'm not saying it worked. I'm saying that was the thought process.
I mean, we wanted Ocean's 11 from Soderbergh, and instead he gave us Ocean's 12.
Well, somebody said, and I kind of agree with this. I do love 12. Someone said that because they kind of knew that nobody was going to pay attention to this one because the slate of movies was not interesting, that this was their year to try a bunch of things to see if they work or don't work.
Well, I'm glad they got them out of their system.
I genuinely believe that they went into that show knowing the ratings were going to be bad no matter what, and just did it the way they wanted to do it. I mean, I will give Soderbergh credit and the producers credit. The Oneer in the beginning with Regina King was amazing.
That. I was excited, like in that moment, I was like, okay, I am in. Let's do the Ocean's 11 music playing. Like, it was
great.
I was in.
Oneer. I also like the aspect ratio. I also like that it was shown in widescreen.
Dude, if the aspect ratio of the show is the second best thing you're saying happened, you know it's a bad show.
But no, I liked the different locations too. I liked the new location. I thought that was pretty cool to shake it up a little bit.
But it's too small. It can't be that way moving forward.
No, I know. Yeah.
But I really appreciated watching the show. It was like 235, which is like a widescreen that most films use, 239, 235. And it just looked cinematic. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I'm like digging the intro. The Oneer's cool. This is going to be awesome. And I mean, I know we're not going to get into a full breakdown of this, but we can't even like begin to describe how terrible the decision was to move picture.
That's exactly what I wanted to get into next.
Before actor and actress. I mean, like, at the end of the day, I think we all feel and agree that they thought Chadwick Boseman was going to win.
I mean, they admitted to it. They admitted that they took a gamble, and the gamble didn't pay off. But also, not only did you kind of make a mess of that, you also, in a weird way, robbed Nomadland of their moment.
Yes, 100%.
Do you think the audience, when they were, here's my question, when they came out to award Best Picture, do you think the people who were sitting in that room were also surprised they were doing Best Picture?
Oh God, yeah.
I think so. Yeah,
because a lot of times they will release in advance the order in which they're going to do the awards, and they didn't this year.
Well, there were 3 different Oscar prognosticators, and I know Kyle Buchanan, who I think is at New York Times now, was one of them, and I forget who the other 2 were. When director got announced as early as it did, they tweeted, "I've heard this isn't the only change made for the evening, like stay tuned kind of thing." So somehow that news was out and was making the rounds, that at least the Oscar folks who track it on social media were commenting that early in the show. But yeah, so you're 100% right that it robbed Nomadland of their ability to, like, that's the Best Picture. They should be the ones on the stage at the end of the show.
Also, they were there.
Yeah.
Like,
and it would have removed the sting a little bit of Hopkins not being there, and kind of, like, the show just ended on such a the show literally ended on Joaquin going, "We accept this award on his behalf."
Did you see, there was like, I mean, again, whatever you read on the internet, you don't know if it's true or not. Did you see, this was a rumor that Olivia Colman was supposed to accept the award for Hopkins?
Him, I heard that.
Was that confirmed?
Oh, I didn't see that.
I heard that also. I'm not sure if it was confirmed, but if that's the case, I wonder why it didn't happen. Because
So,
Joaquin cut
Was
her
she
off.
on her way to the
Well, to give clarity, so that this is just based on some tweets we saw on Twitter where it just said there was a rumor that Olivia Colman was initially going to accept the award, but then I also saw conflicting stories that she was only there for a brief period of time just for her specific
category?
nomination, and she was filming something. So this is nothing against Olivia Colman. We just read this in a tweet, but I don't know because it would explain the abrupt ending. Because theoretically, if Olivia Colman was going to accept the award for him, Joaquin would have. I guess she would have came up and they would have said accepting on his behalf is Olivia Colman. But some people were saying Joaquin ended it abruptly because he was upset about the win. I'm like, that's just rumor.
No.
People are
That's
so
not the
case
case at
about
all.
like theories.
That's almost in the
Yeah.
ballpark of everyone saying that Jack Palance messed up Best Supporting Actress and it wasn't supposed to go to Marissa Tomei. Like that's
Right.
And if anything, in a weird way, that moment and also the La La Land Moonlight thing also shows that they do not know in advance who is going to win. Right. They just don't. Which is kind of reassuring, and also that the only people that do know are Price Waterhouse?
Waterhouse,
yeah. And they're the only ones that know. Like the Academy Award producers, I mean, I think they take gambles sometimes, where I think they had Riz Ahmed and it just worked out that the Oscar he gave, I think it was
Sound of Music.
was Sound of Metal.
Yeah. Sound of Metal.
But then sometimes it backfires because I don't know if you knew that when Shakespeare in Love was given Best Picture, the person that was presenting it was Harrison Ford. And it was clearly meant to be like they thought it was going to be Saving Private Ryan, and it was supposed to be Harrison Ford handing off the Oscar to Steven Spielberg, and it backfired. Michael Douglas gave Best Picture to Gladiator when they must have thought it was going to go to Traffic. So they take these gambles sometimes with the presenter when it and when it works out, like Sam Jackson giving it to Spike Lee, it's awesome. But a lot of times it doesn't work out for him.
Let's also celebrate the great Joaquin Phoenix, who came out on stage in an evening where they had to give these long speeches about each of the people. And he essentially said, yeah, fuck that. I'm not going to do that.
And also, did you find it weird that they didn't do the swap, like the actor for actress and actress for actor?
That was a little strange.
Yeah,
that was a little strange. The whole evening was strange.
Yeah, everything about it.
All the decisions that they made for that show made no sense. None of them made any sense, and it's really hard to justify. Before we go, I want to get back onto Best Actress. So we all went Kari, and we were talking about that the one who might disrupt is Viola.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys feel about Frances McDormand winning?
I gotta be honest, I was a little disappointed. It was just sort of like her third one, her third one. Like it's almost into like the whole Meryl Streep thing, where it's just sort of like. I really wish we lived in a world. Honestly, I would have rather Viola gotten her second one than Frances gotten her third.
Frances plays Lady Macbeth in a Joel Cohen movie.
Jesus,
this
she
coming
can't
year.
win four. She can't win four.
Coming year.
And dude, I forgot about this. There was a quote whenever she won the SAG for 3 Billboards. In that acceptance speech, she basically says, stop giving me awards. Like she says, like, hey, this is great, but there are a lot of young actors who also want doorstops as well. So let's not forget them. She's basically begging people to stop giving her awards.
And she didn't campaign this year.
She did not at all. She didn't do the junket. She didn't do anything.
Nope.
So does anyone do that moving forward?
At the same time, she's phenomenal in that movie.
She's amazing.
Honestly, she's not as good as Viola or Kari.
I'd argue she is. I mean, I would argue that she is. She's Chloe's contributions obviously are significant, but like Frances is the movie.
I think Carrie Mulligan's the movie.
She is.
Yeah. Kari is the promising young woman. I don't think Frances was the Nomadland.
She was the Nomad.
She's not the Nomadland.
To her credit, to Frances McDormand's credit, I need to learn more about the behind-the-scenes making of Nomadland. A lot of this is based on what it seems
I'll
like
send
they
you
did.
my interview with Chloe Zhao.
Thank you. But to her credit, I think she had a real, like, almost Borat kind of sense to her performance, where there's a lot of stuff where it seems like she's just in character and she's just interacting with these real life people. And she's just kind of within her character, kind of knowing what the story needs. Like she's like, there's a scene where like someone's showing her tattoos that's clearly a real person and not an actor, but it doesn't really break you from the story. And she's just kind of fascinated by her tattoos and in character. And there's a lot of that throughout. So I do think her performance is phenomenal.
I agree
with all of that.
And I don't mean to knock her performance, because clearly she's fantastic in the film.
Yeah.
I think there was just a moment of like again, seriously.
But yeah, I agree.
In the same way that like Meryl Streep is always fantastic, but if she wins again, it's just going to be like
Carey Mulligan would have been a
Listen,
great winner.
McDormand is very, very good in Nomadland. There's no arguing there. But I just think Kari Mulligan's performance, that film just destroyed me. I don't know. It was an incredible film, but it was also a film that I loved. It was insanely, weirdly entertaining, but also completely horrific. And just an amazing soundtrack. I do want to say one thing. I watched The Father recently, and I know, Sean, you haven't seen it yet, right?
No, I'd like to very soon. Yes.
I was genuinely blown away. I still believe that Chadwick Boseman should have won the Oscar, but I should have won the Oscar. But Hopkins' performance is incredible. Though I will say, when I walked away from that film, the highlight for me was the direction and the editing and the writing. And then Hopkins is just another great piece of that puzzle. And it's I have never been that immersed in that world more. I now have a better understanding in my mind of the confusion. Not to the level of that, of course, but the film makes you understand the person better from their perspective when they're going through something like that. It's pretty wild.
Let's understand how cruel Jake Hamilton can be by letting him pick which movies that Kevin and I are going to win, because for people who listened to last week's episode, we wagered yet again that the winner the person who got the most Oscar picks correct would get to pick movies for the other two to watch. And Jake beat us 17-15. Kevin and I both tied at 15. Just a few significant categories that ended up splitting the winner. So,
my
Mr.
octopus
Hamilton,
teacher, baby. My octopus teacher.
Mr. Hamilton, the floor is yours.
Okay. So 2 years in a row, I plan on going for the three-peat next year. I'm very excited about this, actually, and because these are not this is not. I didn't want to go in the direction of Human Centipede, because we've been there, we've done that. I didn't want to do. I didn't want to make this horrible
grotesque.
for you. Exactly. Grotesque. So Sean, you will be watching one of my favorite films of all time.
Oh.
You will be watching the extended edition of Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh, God!
That's great.
No!
Wait, can I have that?
No.
No!
You will be watching, and now I emphasize the extended edition of the Lord of the Rings.
How long is that? How long is that?
It's funny you mentioned that, because that brings up my next point. The extended edition of the Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring is 3 hours 48 minutes long.
Oh my God!
And the reason I bring that up is because I wanted to make that equitable for Kevin's quote unquote punishment. And I hate that I even have to make this a punishment, but 3 hours 48 minutes is equitable to about 7 episodes of television. Kevin, you will be watching the next 7 episodes of Lost. I want you to figure out where you are on the show, and I want you to tell me where you're at, and then force yourself by next week to watch the next 7.
That's ridiculous. Because Lost is a good television show.
And Lord of the Rings is one of the greatest movies ever made. You're welcome.
I'm calling bullshit on that, because
I'm going to say thank you to Jake, because I appreciate that. No, it's a good one.
I'll tell you what, Sean, next year when you win, you can call all the bullshit you want.
That's awful.
That's not awful.
So
I'm actually jealous of your assignment.
7 episodes through, Kevin, I want you to tell me the episode that's 7, because I want to know where you're ending off.
I will tell you, the last episode of Lost that I watched was Numbers.
Okay, cool.
So you know what I might do? I might rewatch Numbers, because it was an amazing episode.
Sure. And then the next 7. So really, in theory, if we, depending on, what if you got like 5 or 6 days till we record our next episode, so you got to watch it by then.
I'll have to watch that and Gladiator too. And
you had a week to watch Gladiator. That's on you, O'Connell.
But remember, the TNT version is 3 hours long, so I have
to. It's the Sci-Fi version.
The Sci-Fi. That's right.
In Jake's defense, so Jake and I made a thing a long time ago, before I knew really how many episodes Lost was, that I was gonna watch. I was gonna watch all of Lost, and he was gonna watch Better Call Saul. But I think Jake's being sneaky here, because I think he knows that after I finish the 7th episode that I'm going to want to keep going. Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's fine. I will.
Is the extended edition on HBO Max? Do you know?
I think so, actually.
Because I might have sold my copy.
Well, that sounds like a personal problem.
Well, I see. I see they're
You
doing
can
a
definitely
big
pay to rent it.
They're doing a marathon on TBS this weekend if you want to watch it over a
terrific.
6-hour period.
There we go. It's in. All right. Let's get to
Commercials.
also one of the things that debuted during the Oscars, probably the highlight of the entire Oscar ceremony, was a commercial break that showed the teaser trailer for Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. I thought that this looked phenomenal. Someone commented, I forget who it is, I'd like to give them credit for it, that the way that Janusz Kaminski, the cinematographer that Spielberg works with frequently, the way that he uses to like flood his sets with natural light seems to speak really well to the way that West Side Story can look or should look. I think Spielberg it seems to have just stepped back in time, and I do really wonder, having watched the original West Side Story, which feels very much like a 1950s film, how he's going to make it feel somewhat contemporary, because it's all about things like street gangs and their relationship with the cops, and like, it can be dated and cheesy, so how is he going to update it? But the cast looks great. It's a very quick tease, and I look forward to learning more about it. What did you guys think? Kev, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was more of a visual experience than narrative, character, or emotion. Now, it's a short teaser, so at the end of the day, did I walk away from it thinking, oh my God, I cannot wait to watch that from a story standpoint? No, I didn't get a good sense of, I mean, I've seen West Side Story, but it's been years. I just didn't get a sense of the scope of it. I just got a bunch of beautiful images put together. I mean, there's a shot that we can all agree on where the two sides are walking with the shadows, and it's a brilliant shot. I am curious how practical that was, actually, because it looked like a wide-angle fish lens almost. It was pretty wicked. But like, Kaminski is one of the greatest cinematographers of all time, and everything he's done, the natural light you're talking about, I always loved that. If you watch, I don't know why I think about Bridge of Spies specifically, when they're in a room and just like the windows of light that's just pouring in, it's almost oversaturated a little bit, and I love the way I'm assuming he shot on film for this. I have to double check it, but I would imagine he did, because he usually shoots 35, and I shot, so I'm into it because it's Spielberg and because it's Kaminski. That being said, narratively, character-wise, I didn't feel like I learned anything.
I think that they must think it's a home run, because they didn't go from last December to like April. They went from one award season to the next award season.
They got something. And also keep in mind, you have to remember, Spielberg has been trying to make this movie since the late 80s. He's been trying to acquire the rights and get this. He has been pushing to make this. I honestly think even within that short teaser, I thought I was blown away, because I thought there were a lot of elements that were classic Spielberg where I thought, oh, that's my boy, there he is. And there were also moments where I thought, ooh, I feel like I've never seen him do anything like that before. I really loved his mix of both muted colors and also really, really bright colors. I think that shot of the two gangs walking toward each other with their shadows like crossing over his names, I'm curious as to what that's going to look like on the big screen, but I just thought I was blown away by that single shot. That could very quickly climb the tiers of my favorite Spielberg shots ever, and I think the casting is going to be absolutely incredible. I think Rachel Ziegler, who plays Maria, is going to knock it out of the park. I think she is probably going to be kind of the next big star that we're seeing blow up. She was just cast in Shazam 2, and I think she's going to be fantastic.
There are 3 musicals. It's West Side Story, In the Heights, and one other big one.
In the Heights.
That are coming between now and the end of the year. I forget what the other one is. I forget.
And it is 35 millimeter, by the way. Kaminski still shooting 35. Did he shoot film? Yep, shot film.
You double checked on it?
Double checked it. And then Bernstein music. I mean, it's going to be. I'm excited.
It's going to be a masterpiece.
It's going to be pretty special. That comes in December, so we'll be talking about West Side Story a number of different times between now and then.
Spielberg on Real Blend.
Oh my God, stop. Don't even put that out there.
Can we start the campaign now?
I'm weirdly already disappointed that it's not happening, even though we're not even close to having discussions about it.
I know.
There's no way. But yeah.
The idea of him doing a podcast just feels unnatural.
We have an in, though. I think if we can somehow figure out a situation where Tarantino, he doesn't have to mention our podcast, but we know Tarantino loves podcasts, doing podcasts specifically as press. If he can somehow convince Steven Spielberg that's the supreme way to talk about movies, we got a shot.
God, could you imagine?
If that happens, I don't know.
No, I can't imagine. I could not imagine.
We
However,
forgot. We have to tell him the most important thing, that we really want him on the show.
That's true.
Oh,
we
that's
haven't tried
true.
that.
Let's lead with that.
We haven't tried that
That's
yet.
a good idea. We usually bring that up after.
What studio is West Side Story?
Disney.
It's Disney.
I mean, it's not, not impossible, though. Not impossible.
No, it's not
but it's-
impossible.
yeah.
It's not impossible. We've said this about other filmmakers, and we've ended up getting them. So, I listen.
It's also worked the other way probably just as many times, though. So
Yes, it has.
We are grateful for
names,
everyone we've had on the show, obviously, but
it
Spielberg would
rhymes
be
with-
insane.
There are also other
Blarty
studios that I would feel much
Scorsese.
more confident about if it were one of their
Oh
films.
yeah, absolutely. But
Yeah.
no offense to Disney, who
Sure.
we love.
Oh, we love Disney.
They're
We
the
love Disney.
best. Yes, they're fantastic.
have I talked about how much I love my subscription to Disney Plus?
Let's talk about the variety of selections that are available on Disney Plus.
The real question is, what's going to be my number one series of the year? WandaVision or Falcon and Winter Soldier?
Yeah,
How do
that's
I
all it
choose?
comes down to.
That
How
is the
about Mighty
question.
Ducks? Mighty Ducks?
Dude, I actually like that show. I like that show, dude.
I didn't say anything. I
It's
just told you.
good. Don't knock the ducks.
I was driving to one of my live shots the other day for work, and it was like perfect timing. And every time I see birds flying, they're flying in a flying V. The only thing I think about is Mighty Ducks. That's the first thing I think about.
You know the birds came first, right?
I know that, but you have to understand as a kid.
That's why the V is flying.
I know. You have to understand as a, do you know you have like very specific memories of things?
No, I
and
got
they
you.
They always
I get
latch on
Yeah.
till later. That's the first thing I think about every time I see birds flying in a flying V. Mighty Ducks.
This week in movies, there's that movie Limbo that we had mentioned that the director was on our show in a bonus episode. It's I want to say nice things about it. I'm not able to. I wish I could. He was a really nice guy. Super sweet interview. It felt to me it's a story of refugees in Scotland who have come from all different places around the world who are hoping to get into England. And through various reasons, their visas and their ability to get the work permits to make the next step in their lives. They've left their homelands, but they cannot get to England. So they're in limbo, essentially, and they're at a refugee camp. But it's a comedy. It's a dark comedy. And the only thing I can say is when you get a first-time filmmaker or an early filmmaker who has clearly been influenced by the likes of a Wes Anderson, and I'm going to stop just at Wes Anderson because this feels like it's just trying to become the next Wes Anderson, that you just sit there the whole time watching it thinking like, I'd like to see another Wes Anderson movie. And I'm not necessarily enjoying this. Like the pattern of the humor, the beats of the way that visual jokes play out, it just felt like a lesser Wes Anderson. So that's where I'm leaving you guys with Limbo. It's in limited theaters, and sorry, buddy. Sorry, but I couldn't believe it was nominated for 2 BAFTAs, including like best British film of the year kind of thing. So I don't know, maybe they know more about refugees than I do over that way. There's a movie called Separation coming out this week, which I don't know a whole lot about. A movie called Things Heard and Seen, which is going to Netflix, and Jake has seen that one.
I have seen that. This is a
Did
very
you hear it too?
Yeah. This is a very boring, bland, kind of gothic horror film.
2 for 2 this week.
It's a without giving too much away, though, it doesn't take long to kind of figure out the direction this movie's going in. A married couple with a kid, they move into this old farmhouse out in the middle of the woods because the husband's going to write the next great American novel, and he's going to be this college professor. And it's one of those houses where everyone in the town kind of knows something happened in that house, and the wife kind of starts getting vibes that something happened in that house, and it's got
that sounds really original.
Yeah, and then things kind of like it. The husband kind of starts. The house has a history of doing something to husbands, which it's. There were moments where I was like, oh, you're doing that from that film, and you're doing that from that film. It's if anything, it's just a wonderful collection of movies that did it better, and it just keeps going. And there was a moment where I thought, and I'll end it here, we got to be like wrapping up. This is near the end of the film, and so I kind of did my little thing on my Apple TV to see how much longer I had left. Had an hour left. And I just went, well, I'm going to finish this tomorrow.
You hadn't heard and seen everything yet, man.
Yeah, I guess not. All the things were not seen and heard. It's very bland, it's very generic, and it is the ultimate skippable film.
Do you know, that has happened to me a number of times on films where I legitimately feel like we're reaching the conclusion. And I'll hit pause and there'll be like an hour left to go. And then I become morbidly curious of like,
yeah, and then you're like, okay, what? Something has to happen.
Right? How can we have an hour
and then spoiler alert, nothing happens.
Nothing happens. Yeah, nothing ever happens in a movie like that. Please tell me that we're going to improve this segment with Without Remorse, the Michael B. Jordan, Tom Clancy film that is coming to Amazon Prime Video.
Kev, go ahead.
Yeah, the script is really bad for this one, unfortunately. But the action is kind of cool. I mean, listen, I love Michael B. Jordan. One of the best actors working today. Everything he does is generally very, very good. This is... I don't know. Jake, I don't know. To me, it was forgettable. I do want to give credit to the practical effects. They did some insane action scenes in this film. Like the plane crash scene, they really did that with a water tank, and they also the scene where he walks into a fire car, that was actually real. They did a lot of practical effects, and you can actually feel it when you watch the film. The story isn't good, and the script is terrible. So
it's a shame because it's a Tom
Clancy.
Clancy.
Also not based, but it's not like... There's a Tom Clancy novel called Without Remorse, but this is not it. If you look to see what that book's about, and then
weird.
You see the plot, like they could not be more different. Like they took the title.
Weird.
They took the title, and that's it.
Speaking of unoriginal, it's basically, a guy's wife gets killed, and he goes on a revenge rampage, essentially to find the people who did it.
Okay.
Jake, and also, is that...
But he's a soldier?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And then also they do something that really kind of in a weird way disgusted me in the first act of the film, and I don't think that this is a spoiler because it's in the trailer. But Michael B. Jordan's family is, his wife is pregnant at the beginning of the film, and they really, really, really drive home she is pregnant. She is with child. They are going to have a baby. And then people break into their home and murder her, and like her blood is all over the bedroom and all over the bed.
The sheets, and he's like screaming.
Yeah, he's screaming because he's...
That's in the trailer. They actually show that in the trailer.
But like the fact that like, and look, this is, I don't make movies, so who am I to but like the fact that she had to be, like, why did she have to be pregnant?
Yeah.
Like, and why did you have to drive that home so hard to make that scene, like, feel like, you don't think I would have felt that? Like, it felt gross. It felt
more
really
tragic.
Gross. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's always they always have to go over the top to make you understand the revenge. Not that killing his wife wouldn't be enough, but there was like, it's almost like in John Wick, like, why kill the dog, and that becomes the entire trigger for him for going out for doing the revenge. And I'm not likening a dog. At least
in John Wick, though, that felt clever in a way because it's kind of a movie trope. But it's never really been used as like the revenge story, like because it didn't harp on it. It wasn't necessarily just about avenging a dog, but it was, and that was kind of fun. There's a difference.
Yeah, and that was the thing that put him over the top, was the dog. And again, not comparing John Wick to Without Remorse, just the idea of, to answer Jake's question, it's more about, like, what can they do that's so bad that's going to make you root for this guy to go out and kill a bunch of people? I mean, that's kind of like the character. I mean, but Michael B. Jordan, he's great in it. I mean, there's nothing, it's nothing to do with him. It's just a bad script, and it's just not a great story. I mean, Jake, the action's cool. I thought that.
The action's cool, but also keep in mind, like,
was awesome.
I was also watching it at home, and I was watching. It's just, and also by that point, everything else just felt so generic that I had a hard time getting hyped for the action. Action. The quieter scenes should make the louder scenes better. Like the loud scenes should not make up for bad quiet scenes. And I just thought, like, and all that. And you're right, the action was great until someone spoke. And then it's just like, God, this script was so unbearably bad. And both Jamie Bell and Michael B. Jordan are good actors, and they could not sell those lines. They couldn't sell them.
Yeah. I love Jodie Turner-Smith, and I think she's awesome, and she's great in it. And she's also great in Queen and Slim. If you haven't seen Queen and Slim, highly recommend that one.
Cool. Also coming to theaters for a limited theaters for, I think, just a 1-week run, Edgar Wright's Scott Pilgrim versus the World, celebrating its 10th anniversary. That is a comedy that if you go back and look through it, the cast is just littered with people who were on the precipice of blowing up. So this is a good opportunity to go back and revisit it. It is also going to feed us into this week's Blend Game, which is hashtag Edgar Wright Blend. And for various reasons, I will start with Jake Hamilton.
My pick is Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Hey!
It's funny how that works out. Look, there is not an Edgar Wright film that I dislike. I love, so this is, it's an embarrassment of riches when you consider the fact that, like, the film of it, like, in his filmography that I like the least, I still really like, which I think is pretty cool. But there's something about Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Everything about it is so smart and so clever. The screenplay is just, every line is brilliant. It's brilliant line after, like, so much so there are so many funny jokes that almost get lost because you're still thinking about how clever the last line was, so that the next person's great line is, it's also a great tribute to old school video games. It's a great tribute to sort of the structure. The entire final act revolves around that idea of what we all used to do as kids, which is get to the big boss in a video game, get our ass kicked, get knocked back a few levels, realize what we need to do, blow through a couple of levels to get back to the big boss again. Like the idea that that's this final act of a film. And also, I genuinely believe this, the editing of that film is some of the best editing I've ever seen in any movie, period. How you look at that movie and don't want to nominate that for editing? I mean, like, I would pull a Kevin McCarthy and say that the movie didn't get nominated for editing just because of what kind of movie it is. Like, the editing is genius. The editing, in a weird way, is a character in and of itself. I've watched the movie. I probably watch it about once a year. Everything about it is and every person is amazing. Whether it's Michael Cera in a top role, or someone like Brie Larson, or who kind of shows up in a minor role, or Anna Kendrick who shows up in a minor role. Everyone gets a moment where they're the best part of the movie, and it's just, everything about it is so concise and tight. It moves, and it just makes me. I love that movie to pieces.
I'm gonna go next because I want to build off a point that you bring up, which is, I think Edgar Wright has gotten better as a filmmaker, but I think he's always been a tremendous editor. Mm-hmm. Like, his comedies they thrive on the fact that he edits them together the way that he does.
Agreed.
And I'm picking Hot Fuzz as my pick because I love the types of movies that it sends up. I genuinely
also went
love
Hot
those
Fuzz,
movies.
so we can do a mutual discussion.
Tag team
cool.
Excellence. I mean, Kevin and I both love the types of movies that film sends up repeatedly. The films that Nick Frost adores and that he finds himself in the middle of, Bad Boys, The Rock, like him rattling off all the movies that he loves. I was like, yeah, I like all those movies too. But that movie, and I rewatched the first 15 minutes of it just to remind myself, the editing is so on point that, like, from the first few minutes you realize, like, oh, we're in for something really special here, right? Like, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost are so perfect for Edgar Wright. Like, they know what he wants to deliver. They understand his humor. I argue that there's certain actors who just know Wes Anderson well and do his dialogue better than others do, and they get what his joke is supposed to be, and those two get what Edgar Wright's joke is supposed to be. I think Hot Fuzz is actually an exciting movie when it gets into the police case, the nature of it. Simon Pegg has never been funnier. And, with something like Baby Driver, I think he's bringing his editing skills and developing more of the story and the characters. I don't think he's going to lose his editing skills, but he's developing more and getting better at being a filmmaker and a storyteller. But those early bits of his are so visually exciting, and Hot Fuzz is a total blast. Like, if you wanted me to introduce someone to Edgar Wright, that's the one I would put on and say, like, this is the type of film that he delivers. Kev, what's your take?
I mean, essentially what you said. I mean, Hot Fuzz it spoke to me because the characters were fans of the movies that I was fans of, like Bad Boys 2 being mentioned, like films that I genuinely loved. Don't they mentioned Bad Boys 2 specifically, like the second one specifically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like they are like really like that, and that's kind of what was so fun for me. I remember because I loved Shaun of the Dead. And speaking of editing, the way that whole entire film was cut together, but the Cornetto trilogy in general, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and then World's End. I love that whole trilogy, but I think Hot Fuzz is my favorite because it's a genuinely good action movie that's paying homage to other action films. So at the same time, like, it's not just like two guys running around like playing with action ideas, they get themselves in really cool action scenes. And when they play on the jokes about that, it makes it fun. But I also care for the characters. I also care for their journey. I also care for their story. I'm not just like laughing at it like a parody. It's more of like an homage, but we're gonna tell our own story. But we know that the audience who's watching this is also a fan of these movies, so we're gonna play with that and make you feel like you're part of the world. And I love Scott Pilgrim as well, but I think Hot Fuzz for me, that Cornetto trilogy is like, that's the Edgar Wright that I know, right? Like, and I love. And Baby Driver is a phenomenal film. I rewatched it recently. I still don't love the third act with Ham in the garage and everything, but
it gets over the top, but it's so good. The movie's really good though.
The first 2 acts of Baby Driver are perfect. Like that the simple oneer of Ansel Elgort walking and then walking back,
and all the visual references in the song.
The music,
it's really brilliantly choreographed.
Wiper blades on track with, like, obviously the tequila sequence. It's Baby Driver is a hard one not to choose because in my opinion, I would say from a filmmaking perspective, it's probably the best thing he's ever done. From like just pure, I don't know, because then you go back to the old stuff, which is great and it's more raw. But I also love what he's become in Baby Driver. So the one he's doing next is Last Night in Soho with Anya Taylor-Joy.
Comes out this fall.
Which is going to be, I think, is going to be amazing.
And then he's doing The Running Man. He's remaking Running Man.
Gonna crush. Like, that is such a story that could use an update, and I cannot wait to see what he does. Like, there are sometimes I think, well, obviously we see remakes and we think, does this need to exist? Like, it's no better. Like, I genuinely think he's gonna take The Running Man and run away with it, no pun intended, and make it. Honestly, that was not on purpose. I just think he's gonna crush, because as much as I love the Schwarzenegger Running Man, that source material lends itself to 2021 more so than it does the 1980s.
Also, credit to Edgar Wright, who shoots on film always. Like, that dude always shoots on film. So, again, one of the guys preserving it. I also loved his Grindhouse bit, too. It's a good one.
I'm going to pour a little bit out for the lost Ant-Man movie that we didn't get. Edgar Wright in the MCU would have been exciting.
Like Peyton Reed's movie.
I'm not saying anything about Peyton Reed's movie. But you don't want to see Edgar Wright's version of that story?
No question. I feel like I could tell the Edgar Wright bits.
I was going to say, the best parts of that movie are Edgar Wright's.
Edgar Wright, yeah.
I would say that they are. All right, audience picks. Jim Mintier, Josh the Jays fan, went with Scott Pilgrim. Miles, Comic Book Craig, Jason Clark, and Ray Perkin went with Hot Fuzz. Dave Holmes said Shaun of the Dead, Harry Lichtman, and many others chose Baby Driver. For next week's show, I know why we're doing this, Gabe. For next week's show, you can reach out on Twitter, or you can email us at realblend@cinemablend.com using the hashtag David Oyelowo Blend. David Oyelowo Blend. And really, there's only
Kevin,
one
you can't
choice.
pick Interstellar.
You can't pick Interstellar. It's true.
I can't. I won't pick Interstellar. I mean,
But Sean,
he's great in that scene, though.
Why are we doing him next week?
Because we have him as a guest on next week's show. He has a movie coming out called The Waterman, which is actually, he uses this term in the interview, and it's a term that I would actually use to describe the film. It's Spielbergian, and he brings it up saying it's making him super uncomfortable that so many people are coming up to him and describing this movie as Spielbergian, because he just doesn't want to hear that. Like, the more that people keep saying that to him, ridiculous. I shouldn't give this away, but this is kind of crazy about David Oyelowo. He was ready to star in this film, and they had a young actor, because it's driven largely by a young kid's performance. He was going to play the father. They had Rosario Dawson playing the mother. They had everything ready to go. And then the director had to leave, had to step away. Like, they were literally days away from shooting. Well, not days, because he thought about it for 2 weeks. And everyone turned to David Oyelowo and was like, you got to direct this. Like, it's your turn. And he's never directed. He did a short film. And so he thought on it for 2 weeks, he said. And then he was like, we have all of the elements here. All right, I'm going to step in and do it.
Wow.
And I thought he knocked it out of the park.
He said this to you in the interview?
Yeah, it's all part of the
I
interview.
can't wait to hear that interview.
It's going to be really good.
Cool.
So it'll be on next week's episode. All right, for a review, this guy Keith, who listens to the show, sent us a really wonderful email about finding motivation and kind of following your passions, and he talked a bit about how he's taking up filmmaking again and is working on a piece of his own and credits the show for sort of kicking him down the road for this. So I want to get to his review, but I wanted to set that up a little bit. He says, here's why I wanted to write. He had a long email explaining that he's been working on a film. And he says, here's why I wanted to write in and thank you guys. As grateful as I am to have a job that pays me enough to go out and chase my dream and allowed me to keep working through the pandemic, it wasn't an easy year for me personally. Most of my coworkers think I'm an idiot with a dream too big for this world because he wants to be a filmmaker. And he works in an office setting where, you know, it doesn't encourage creativity, essentially. Most of my coworkers think I'm an idiot with a dream too big for this world. So as a result, I've dealt with a lot of verbal harassment and abuse. I'm the kind of guy who can brush it off. But when you work 7 days a week, 12-hour shifts, and at night, sometimes it's hard to keep putting on a tough face. I'm kind of like my workplace losers club, only I'm the only member. There came a point when I wasn't sure if I'd be able to keep going with the job and just give up and find another job. But then, like Gandalf appearing over the hill near the end of Two Towers, I found your podcast, and it was the best thing that could have happened to me. Over the course of this back end of the year, I started listening to your show, and it brings me such joy. I laugh, I agree, I disagree, and I find myself verbally responding to things that you guys say to each other or answering a question you don't know the answer to. So in addition to being the guy who thinks he makes movies at work, I'm now the guy who talks to himself too. I don't mind though, because I get so much joy listening to your show. It's given me such a lifeline, and it's great to listen to people talk about film as enthusiastically as I do. So I wanted to thank you guys for creating such a fantastic show and for giving me that final push I needed to cross the finish line. I'm quitting in June to prepare to start production. So I tell myself I only have a month to go. I've started listening to your show from episode 1 and working my way up. So that dude is going out to make a film. He's quitting his awful job, and he's been inspired by our show. So Keith, Godspeed, my friend. Keep your foot to the gas pedal, and we look forward to send us a link. Send us a Vimeo
I was
link.
just about to say, is it too presumptuous to say that whenever he's done with the film, we should have him on?
Let's see how the movie turns out, right?
I'm sorry. How often do we have directors on and then trash the project after the interview?
Like this episode, like we did in this episode. No, of course, Keith. If you would like to come on the show, contact producer Gabe.
Love that review. Thank you for sending that.
To be fair,
in.
every week I
Here's
have
his
to
telephone
contact
number.
producer Gabe because to be on the show.
All right. Next week's premium episode, which you can get to if you subscribe to Real Blend. No, wait. CinemaBlend.com /
Come on, Sean.
I don't have no idea. We're going to be matching funny movie reviews to the movie that they are about. And you guys do not want to miss that one. Again, you can get access to all of our Real Blend episodes of premium at bit.ly / Real Blend Premium. Thank you, Gabe. In the meantime, follow us on social media at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, and at Sean_O'Connell. We will be back with a new episode next week, Blenders. Thank you for tuning in. And until then, Larry
Spielberg.
QB.
QB.
We gotta either quit this bit or
We need
pick
a Spielberg
something.
one. We've been saying we're going to do a Spielberg one. Lincoln.
I like Lincoln.